Huh.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome back to episode 4 of season 1, The Inner Voice. We had taken a break for about 4 weeks, and that was due to the Muharram functions that were taking place at the center. We are now back online, and we want to introduce to you our panelists for tonight before we go on to the topic. 2 of our guest panelists have returned. Maulana Sayyid Zishan Haidar Naqvi, who is the resident alim of Mombasa. We welcome him back to our program this evening. Maulana, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you, Maulana. We thought we'd lost you for a second over there. Our next panelist, you're welcome. Our next panelist is Zuhair Ladak. He has been with us before. And of course, Zuhair, as you all know, he's a lawyer with a medical public health background and also in international human rights. Zuhair, assalamu alaikum, welcome back.
Wa alaikum salam, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Our third panelist is new on the board for this evening, and he has an extensive background that I will not go over all of it, but I must say that he is a retired judge in the industrial court. He was also a prosecutor at the United Nations Rwanda Genocide Tribunal. He is currently retired and he works at Bilal in Kenya. In addition, he was a former board member of the Kenya Anti-Corruption Authority and a delegate of the Constitutional Commission of Kenya. Murtaza Jafar, assalamu alaikum, and welcome to the program for this evening.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Thank you very much for this invitation.
It's an honor to have you with us and the rest of the panelists as well. As everyone you see on the screen, we have the topic for this evening, the importance and need of Marjaiyyat. And I've been told it's a very sensitive topic, but that's the point of the inner voice, talking about what we tend to keep inside. I am your host, Muhammad Nazir Khaki, and this program for tonight is the institution. These are the core questions we want to answer. Is the institution a core component of our faith, the institution of Marjaiyyat? And number 2, does it still have a place in the evolving and rapidly changing environment? Now, as I started off by saying, this is very sensitive, but what I think we should do is maybe we go to the starting and try to understand the roots of Marjaiyyat, how it began, before we continue on with tonight's topic. So may I ask one of the guest panelists to please start? Maulana Saib?
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين وهو خير ناصر ومعين الحمد لله كما هو أهله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. When we discuss about the Marjaiyyah, it is from ruju'. Ruju' means reverting to someone. So if you look at the intellect, so you find a human being in this world, whether he is religious or not religious, doesn't matter who is he is in need of ruju' or reverting. In our life, we have different type of needs. Sometimes we are sick and we are in need of medication. So what we do, we revert to a person who is expert in medical. So this is something that belongs to our intellect. And the same way, when we are in need of any mas'ala or when there is a religious need, so our aql or our intellect, it encourages us that we have to revert to somebody who is expert in the religious matter and in a madhab matter. So this is, we can say the Marjaiyyat, it is something that belong to the intellect, and the evidence upon it, it is our wisdom and our aql. Secondly, if you look at the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. You have to revert to those who are knowledgeable in case when you do not have knowledge. And likewise, we have a hadith of Ahlul Bayt, a hadith of Rasulullah, and hadith of A'imma. Those tells us to revert to the ulama, to revert to those who are expert in this field. And finally, Marjaiyyat, we can say this is, it has all the evidence upon it, intellectual evidence, and we have Quran, we have a hadith of Ahlul Bayt. So this is the root of Marjaiyyat.
Thank you, Maulana Saib, for that introduction. Zuhair Bhai, Murtaza uncle, is there anything you'd like to add before I proceed with this topic?
As Maulana says, this is a logical conclusion that you arrive at because you need expertise, because you are not expert in anything, and whether it's a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer or even a basic fundi, your shoe breaks, and you go to someone who knows how to fix it. So in the same way, what happens when your wudu breaks, and what do you do? How do you assure yourself that the salah you will conduct thereafter is worth going on with or not? What must you do? And where do you get that information from? Even if you can, Dr. Google the Quran and some ahadith, you will not find the answer. So it's basically the exercise of logic and rationality to start with.
Where you're about to say something.
Nazir. Yes, with regards to the issue of Marjaiyyat in terms of its background, it is very important for us to understand that there are several references in our hadith books with regards to the issue of fuqaha. For example, the fifth Imam had asked one of his companions, Aban bin Taghlab, to sit in a mosque and issue fatwa. The 11th Imam has given an extensive criteria of fuqaha and who are the ones who can be able to adorn themselves with the title of fuqaha. At the same time, with regards to the 12th Imam, he had clearly mentioned, as far as in one of his tawqees are concerned, his letters, which is recorded in Wasail al-Shia, that basically if we have an issue with regards to something that is emergent to us, it is new to us, which is ununderstandable to us, we need to refer to scholars. And he clearly says it, that they are our hujjat, that is hujjat upon us, while he is hujjat upon them. And therefore, it becomes incumbent upon us to have somebody to return to in terms of being the marja, in terms of being the most knowledgeable in relation to Islamic matters. So the issue of Marjaiyyat is very well founded in faith. We cannot say that it is something not part of our core faith. It makes us part of the faith because of this very exact example, that when the Prophet was passing away from this earth, he actually handed over the religion into the hands of a wali, his wali, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Can we then, being believers of the wilaya, decide now that Marjaiyyat is not a core component? Then the question arises that who were we handed over to when the 12th Imam went into Ghaibah? There was a clear sunnah to be followed. We were handed over to a wali. It was necessary for us to be handed over to somebody when the 12th Imam went into Ghaibah. And that, in essence, are our maraja, our scholars. Yes, Nazir.
So Zuhair, you've made some very valid and strong points. However, things that we know about, for example, I've heard many times in the past, the marja who are mostly in the Middle East, Iraq, Iran, perhaps even Syria, I'm not sure. But they are not familiar. You see, our community has spread apart. Now we have a lot of our community members in the UK, Canada, United States, Australia. And they've spread apart, and they say that the Marjaiyyat, the scholars, with all due respect, they don't know what our communities are facing in these parts of the world. And they might have representatives, but the information that they get perhaps from the representatives is not clear-cut enough for them to be able to make a decision. What do you have to say to that? And anyone can please feel free to jump in.
When it comes to the issue of when it comes to the issue of our community having spread apart all over the world, that is exactly the point in time when we are going to be faced with new environments, probably new questions from the environment that we are now finding ourselves in. It makes it all more the reason for us to refer to our scholars in case we are faced with anything new within our new environments. It comes to, as Maulana Sahib had stated, it comes to a matter of rationale. It comes to a matter of somebody's intellect and wisdom, that when you're faced with something that probably touches on your religion, and it is something that you are unable to find an answer to, it is necessary that you refer it to the professionals in the field, or rather to the scholars in the field. When we are really willing to refer, as the respected council said, that we are willing to refer our shoe repairs to somebody who knows how to repair the shoe. We cannot refer our religious masala to somebody who is more learned than us. It would beat the logic if actually that was the case.
Mohammed Bhai, would you allow me to add something?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Actually, Nazir Bhai, it is in fact a misconception about the Marjaiyyat that our Marajid are unaware about our situation. Indeed, if you look at the Marajih life and you look at the system of what they have in, whether they are in Iraq or in Iran, indeed they have perfect system, and it is a game of our enemies, those who are trying to make us or keep us away from the Marjaiyyah. I know about the Marajih because I lived in Qom, I lived in in those countries. So I have seen with my eyes that our Marajih, they are aware about each and every environment and situation what is happening in the world. Let me give you my story. Once upon a time when I used to be in UK, so I used to think the same, that how our Marajih, those who are sitting in home and they confine themselves into a room or there, how they are aware about our situation. But wallahi, I guarantee you, or you trust in me, that I have seen when I was working in the office of Ayatollah Nasir Makarim Shirazi, and I know his schedule since morning till evening. First 2 hours of his morning time, he used to receive a reporter who gives him entire information of the world, what is going on there. Secondly, he used to receive the second reporter who is giving the in brief what is happening in the Iran and different countries, and analyzers they got in their team. And not only that, I was once upon a time I was translating a book of Ayatollah Nasir Makarim Shirazi that is called Sexual Issues of the Youth, Mushkilat-e Jinsiyya Jawanan. So in there he has written things that we cannot even imagine what is happening in European countries and in other parts of the world as well. So he has solved all those issues. The issue is we are not aware what our Marajih how they tackle all these issues. The issue is our youth and our community is not connected with the ulama in reality.
If I can interject for a few minutes, one of the things is that our youth today, they face different problems every single day. Some of these problems may not have been addressed by the Marajah. Okay. Exactly. And one thing that we don't have in this day and age anymore is patience to get the answers for what they are seeking. So they have this concept that they live very far away to go and get the answers and come back. No, we need another solution. And this solution is being filled by people who are perhaps trying to give a different view of religion. Now, how do we explain a youth who is seeing both sides of the world, but is not seeing conclusive proof that, okay, I want an answer to my question, I want it now? Murtaza Bhai, maybe you can add something to this.
First of all, if you allow me, the question, the way you pose it, itself is irrational. How does one know that the Marajaiyyat don't know without actually understanding what they do? So this is Baraza talk, which is part of what causes confusion amongst the ignorant. And if we're going to have a serious discussion about serious and important issues that affect our souls and our future, our akhirah, then we should at least be serious about it ourselves and not fall into the trap of somebody shooting his mouth off about something that he or she does not understand. I could give you 10, 15 examples now, if there was time, on the kind of issues that Marajaiyyat are studying, the kind of research institutes that they're addressing, the kind of intellectuals, the high caliber intellectuals from the Western world that they are surrounding themselves with for knowledge, including non-Muslims. So you only have to read Ayatollah Sistani's fatwa on sex change. If you have any understanding of science, you will get the shock of your life that this is the so-called old man sitting in a corner and going nowhere, who talks faster and better than a doctor. And we go around screaming human rights and gender rights, and he describes what is gender from a scientific perspective, and then goes on to the fatwa. What therefore you should do, what is allowed and what is not allowed.
Let me come in here, Nasir.
Allow me to finish about the youth. Sorry, may I? About the youth getting confused. The information is there, it's available. There are lots of web pages that you can click on and ask and answer a question and get a very quick answer authoritatively from the marja of your choice. The problem partly is this communication gap between the older generation and the youth. Maybe the madrasa is not tuned for that. Maybe the mimbar is not tuned for providing and filling this gap so that young people know that there is access to knowledge and information easily available. But to suggest that it is not there is not true.
Where you wanted to add something to it?
Yes, just borrowing from what Councillor said, and indeed rightly so. I believe the Marajaiyyat in Qum and Najaf, for example, have actually set up websites where you can actually refer your masail to them, and they actually respond. So there has been steps that have been taken by the Marjaiyyat to get close to the Muqallid. That has to be acknowledged. That is something that we need to accept wholeheartedly. Firstly. Secondly, the disconnect that you were talking about. Remember, disconnect is actually a two-way traffic. It's a devil's sword. It can cut both ways. If I may pose it to you, that the disconnect is not from the Marajaiyyat to the Muqallid, it's from the Muqallid to the Marajaiyyat. If in that sense, let me also pose it this way. If we cannot connect to Marajaiyyat who are accessible to us, who we can see, who we can communicate to, how will we ever connect to an imam we can't see? It's something that would beat the logic. The aspect of Marjaiyyat is something that we need to make an effort towards understanding. It is somebody who probably has given up his life to study, to go through thousands of texts, to come up with fatwas, to come up with hadith, such that these things are now accessible to us. When we start reading a few books and consider ourselves to be knowledgeable, that we can be able to now pass fatwas while seated in our office blocks or maybe sitting rooms or maybe in a baraza, the way councillors put it, it would be a shame on us that we are now interfering into fields where we know nothing about. The disconnect can actually go to the side on that the Muqallid themselves are disconnected with the Marjaiyyat. At the end of the day, we also have to make an effort to connect to them, isn't it?
Now, if I can just, we spoke about disconnect, and Murtaza uncle also spoke about the madrasa and the schools, or even the member. But there's more than that in terms of playing a role in the mind of a child. The children are constantly on their mobiles, for example, okay? That is the easiest and fastest way to get access to them now. That's a fact. How can we understand or make them understand our community, forget the youth now, our community, that we need to instill this ideology in the madrasas in a manner that can have some rational thought process, like Murtaza uncle said, it needs to be rational. So how are we going to be able to do that when madrasa is only for 2-3 hours a week? Maulana Sahib, would you like to add anything to this?
Yeah, of course, we have to focus on this core thing, and that is Marjaiyyat, and we have to promote it through the madrasa and understand children from their small age. And this is very, very important. And we have to work upon it. And Alhamdulillah, we are working upon it. But the issue is, sometimes, you know, there is always invasion. And not only nowadays, from day one, there is an invasion on our leadership. Even if you look at the time of Aimma and time of Rasul, there was invasion from the enemies. So both things we have to understand. On one side, we have to focus and we have to, you know, educate our children about the Marjaiyyat. Secondly, we have to keep in our mind that they are enemies. They are people. Those are against the madhab of Ahlul Bayt. They want to invade in different ways.
I have a question here. We have somebody who's asked that, yes, we understand that the Prophet gave the wali to Imam Ali, but these are the divinely chosen Imams. Where did the concept of Marjaiyyat in itself start?
Okay, if I may come in with regards to that question. Nazir, I had referred to the hadith of, or rather the part of the Tawqi, the letter that the 12th Imam had written, that is recorded in Wasail al-Shia, where he categorically states that we need to refer our issues to the fuqaha, for they are hujjat over us and he is hujjat over them. So that should be something that actually is categorical from the Imam of the time. He has already set up a system that when he does go into Ghaiba, there is somebody who is going, or there is a group, or there is someone left behind, or a system that in actual sense will take care of the people around. That is something we need to understand. With regards to the fact that the Imams were, of course, divinely chosen, yes. Then the same divinely chosen leader has now asked you to follow the fuqaha. Are you going to pick and choose what you're going to follow from the Imam of your time? Or is it something that has now been left to conjecture? Remember something. The moment we decide to question Marjaiyyat, we shall be weaned off from the concept of Mahdaviyyat. Our Mahdaviyyat, our faith in the Mahdi shall come under attack. It has been so far been protected by the Marjaiyyat in various ways. Okay? The very concept of Mahdaviyyat in itself does include the aspect of Marjaiyyat. The concept of Marjaiyyat is not something that probably is something new to us, or that for that matter. As I said, there were hadith by the Imams from the time of the Prophet, like the way Maulana had stated, with regards to people passing fatwa and the fuqaha. The concept of Marjaiyyat in its current form, in the sense that there is a global Marjaiyyat, started from Sheikh Murtaza al-Ansari. This was in the 1850s, I believe. It was at that time that a system of a global Marjaiyyat was established, which of course makes things easier. Rather than going to a local Maraja or maybe a local scholar, you are able to refer to the most alam of the time, who was probably seated in Najaf at that time. So from the 1850s to around, it's been about what, 250 odd years that we have had a system of Marjaiyyat with the most alam in place, being able to be referred to by the Muqallid themselves. Yes.
Muntaz uncle, is there anything you want to add? Because I have a question also coming through.
Yeah, I would turn this question on its head. Assume that the 12th Imam did not tell us anything about Marjaiyyat, and he went into Ghaiba. What would we be doing today? How would we be interpreting our religion? Would we have hundreds of firqas amongst the Shia, each one with his own local leader deciding that things should go this way, each mullah unto his own, and then each one of us unto our own? So you can pray facing a little bit north, and I will pray a little bit northeast, and make our own fatwas. In issues of muamalat, what is haram, what is halal, in terms of whether I can take riba or not, how much, how will I, just imagine the confusion and crisis that we would be in. And human beings, logic does not allow for such crisis to continue endlessly. So human beings quickly get together and surround themselves around the most knowledgeable. That is the logical, rational thing to do, to surround yourself around that who is most knowledgeable. And this is
I
what
believe there is a hadith to that effect, being with people who are more knowledgeable. But there's one question over here. Pardon me, it's a mix of question and a comment. Unfortunately, we as parents are passing the buck to the madrasa and the mimbar. We as parents need to take responsibility for our children and educate ourselves and then educate our children. Marjaiyyat is the core of our system. If we as parents don't understand, or worse, deny it because the fatwas don't please our nafs, then how will we guide our children? Denying Marjaiyyat is in actuality denying religion. That is a comment. What do you have to add to this before I go to the next question, just briefly?
Nazir, I totally agree with that. As it is basically an underscoring of what I had said, that the concept of Marjaiyyat in actual sense is the one protecting our faith in Mahdaviyyat. Let us be very clear and unequivocal about it. Without the Maraje, we would not even know who Muhammad was, let alone Allah. We would not even know who Muhammad was. We seated in a corner in Africa somewhere, or probably even southern than that, and probably in the north, being bathed in snow, we would not even know if it how to actually perform wudu or go to the washroom for that matter, if it was not for the Maraja. And then there are factions with regards to the issue of, yes, there are some, as the comment had said, that the buck is actually being passed to the madrasa and the mimbar. We also need to take responsibilities as parents as well. But coming into play is the fact that there are some elements who very well know that they are insinuating a deliberate attempt to actually put in doubt in the minds of the youth. It is a deliberate attempt. There are some who are innocent, yes. In this instance, there are some parents, of course, who are passing the buck. They also need to take up responsibility. But there are some elements who are actually pumping our youth's minds with anti-Marjaiyyat propaganda. That needs to be addressed. But let me finish this. I have personally come to understand that there are elements within our communities who actually sit in some sort of a get-together and possibly come to a point that they would say that Sheikh al-Kulaini, for that matter, Kitab al-Kafi, blundered at this point, or Ayatollah Sistani, in this instance, blundered. What I'm wondering is that if those parents have got children, I wonder what they're being fed. These are some of the things that we need to also understand, that there are these elements. We seated in our businesses, in our offices, probably air conditioned and all, are now passing fatwa on somebody who has spent 50 years writing a book on fatwa or a book of masail. For example, the author of Al-Ghadir, it took him 35 years to write that book. 35 years. Are we going to sideline that by sitting in our offices and passing comments such as this Sheikh blundered, this Ayatollah blundered? I actually tend to think that there is a mixture of both. There is an innocence part of it, that we need to take more responsibility in ensuring that our youths are driven towards Marjaiyyat, but there is also a deliberate attempt to pump in the wrong information, Nazir.
Okay. I want to bring a question, but you might have answered it. If you feel you've answered it, we'll just move on. Centuries ago, religion was focused as a whole. I'm going to repeat this. Centuries ago, religion was focused as a whole, but we are now a much more secular society. Do you think this has a big role to play in how our youth think? The comment I made about...
I would say certainly. I mean, we take a Western secular education, and then we try and fit our religion into it. And where the religion does not fit, the spaces are not there, then we look for ways to discard. What can we cut off? And because the marja says no, then we try and cut off the marja as well. So it's a dancing game that we play with our minds in order to satisfy ourselves that what we, it's also substantial ignorance on our part because of a deep secular education. We've missed out on religious education, on the philosophical aspects of it, on the deeper issues around really understanding aqaid. And these are our challenges, and we need to recognize them and find ways to recover from them.
So if I can interrupt. Sorry, okay. Maybe now that we think and we know that the secular society is what is the norm right now, the standard, and these are the questions, that is why we are getting them, because of a secular mind as opposed to a religious mind. I have a question over here. Maulana Sahib, maybe perhaps you can also, because you've, why does a marja have to take all the responsibilities of his followers as well as so much criticism? Is he improving his akhirat or he is risking it? It's a bit of a, I'm not sure about this question, but do we want to move on or do we want to address this question? I'm sorry,
Can you explain it more, please?
Yes. So why does a marja have to take all the responsibilities of all his followers as well as so much criticism? Is he improving his akhirat or is he risking it? I'm assuming this is talking about marja as being a human being, not a masoom. Why would they be able to take so much why would they take so much responsibility of followers and get so much criticism in the process?
Yes, actually, marja, when he gives direction or when he gives us in guidance, he looks the guidance of Allah, and there is Quran and Ahadith and all that. So with all criticism, he does not care what people are going to and how people are going to attack on him. He just think about Allah and about the guidance. As you know, in the hadith of Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, marja, you know, I'm just giving you the not translation, the meaning of the hadith. فَأَمَّا مَنْ كَانَ مِنَ الْفُقَهَا صَائِنًا لِنَفْسِهِ. Marja is the one who is controlling his carnal desire, who has absolute control on his carnal desire, or absolute control on his nafs. Hafidhan ladine, the one who protect religion in best way. Mukhalifan ala hawa, and who is against his hawa and desires. Muti'an li amri mawla, and he is absolute what you call obedient to his master. So these are the qualities of the marja. So when marja gives any fatwa, so he has only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in his mind, and his duty to guide the community.
Okay, I have a question here, but I'm not really sure how it actually applies in this. So if we feel it does not apply, I'm not familiar with this topic at all, but that's why I'm just asking this question. Please shed some light on akhbaris in light of the topic, need for marjaiyyat. Zuhair, it sounded like you know something.
Okay, from the outset, let me just come into play and put in a disclaimer. Whatever I'm going to say now is not something that is probably divisive in terms of the Shia 12ers, us, the Ja'afariya, with regards to the Akhbari movement. The Akhbari movement historically is something that probably took place around the 1750s. And it is a group of scholars with the viewpoint that they can only, of course, refer all their questions, their issues to the Imam of the time, and they will infer directly from the Quran and Hadith. The issue of ijtihad with Akhbaris does not exist, where one can apply his own logic or probably his own reasoning in deriving laws. On the other, there were quite a few renowned Akhbaris. And then on the other hand, we have the Usulis, who of course are the current school that is of course the majority in terms of this viewpoint. The Usulis of course believe in ijtihad and of course a set gauge of marjaiyyat. That is basically the difference between the two. The issue of the difference is not something that probably infiltrates into us as mukallaf. It does not bother us. It should not involve us. These are ways of deriving fatwa. Somebody can use ijtihad and derive his fatwa. Somebody does not use ijtihad and decides to use only the Quran and Hadith and derive fatwa. It is not a form of division amongst the 12. Let me be very clear with that. In the 1700s and the 1800s, there was quite a bit of push and pull between the Usulis and the Akhbaris. I'm really cutting it short here. And that there was, of course, the Usulis prevailed. And today's 95% of the marjas and, of course, all the rulings that are with us are all based on Usuli fiqh. It has now found a resurgence, and it is a deliberate resurgence now that you will find that the Akhbari movement is being raised up in a very evolved kind of a fashion. You will find it being peddled by a PhD from a university in Australia, where he is now giving a talk with the current modern trends in Akhbari views. This is a deliberate attempt to divide the 12ers. When you look at the issue at the Marjaiyyat level, between these two Marajas, who have actually, one of them being an Akhbari and another being an Usuli, they are very cordial amongst each other. They accord each other very massive respect. They will sit in each other's madrasas and probably classes and derive lessons from each other as they go forth. There is a lot of congeniality between the two. But when it comes down to us Mukallid, it is now being used as a divisive politics. There is no biasness with regards to one being Akhbari or one being Usuli. These are things that should not even bother us. These are at the level of academicians. We should simply follow the fatwa of the Marajih that we have decided to do taqleed of. It is as simple as that. Thanks, Nazir.
That's very deep. Murtaza uncle or Maulana, if there's anything you want to add before I go to the next question?
Yes. Actually, when we look at the Akhbari school of thought and Usuli Akhbari or Usuli school of thought, the difference between them, it is only that akhbari, they rely only on ahadith, and they rely only on ayat of Quran. But when it comes to the usuli also, they rely on the Quran and on ahadith, as well as, what they have done. What is the difference between them? Actually, there is no difference. What we get from akhbar, what we get from the riwayat is the same what we get from the fatawa of Marajaiyyat. In the beginning, before 4th century, actually there was no need of the ijtihad. Our ulama like Sheikh Mufid, Sheikh Sudu, and Aqil ibn Ali, and all those, they were akhbari ulama. And there was no need of ijtihad, there was no need of usul. So what they used to do and how they used to give the fatwa, they used to just bring the hadith of Masoom, they used to just bring the ayah of Quran and guide the people. And the aim of both madhab, or both, you can say the thought of the school of thought, was the guidance to the people, either through the fatwa or through the ahadith directly and the ayat of Quran directly. But today, or later on, what happened? The issues become various, like lifestyle has changed, that made or encouraged our ulama to become usuli and start giving the fatawa, and that's it.
Thank you, Maulana Sahib. I'll go to the next question. And considering, Murtaza uncle, when we spoke about the secular mind previously and how our youth think, there's one question over here. Sometimes there are division between the maraja, for example, moon sighting, laws on food. How does one reconcile? Is this the blame of followers on creating disunity, or are the maraja not agreeing due to certain laws?
I mean, clearly, every professor follows a certain set of research and parameters and arrives at a conclusion, which conclusion may not be very far from the next one. But there are small differences. And we as muqallids, or we as students of a particular professor in a scientific faculty, would follow one or the other. And this is natural, and this is normal, and happens everywhere. So in moon sighting, there are certain principles that are being used to arrive at conclusions. And if I'm a muqallid of one, then I follow that. And I'm a muqallid of the other, then you follow the other one. The larger point that keeps on affecting us, especially around moon sighting, is Muslim unity. And not having two Eids, because normally we get concerned and troubled about the moon when it is around Eid. Then haram and halal becomes very important, whether we are going to fast or not. The rest of the 11 months, we don't really bother much with that. And there's a lot, there is, as I understand, a move afoot to work together amongst a lot of the Marajaiyyat to come to common ground on moon sighting, not only amongst Shias, but with the larger Muslim Ummah, so that the dignity of the Ummah is sustained through common agreement. And I think this will come.
Okay, thank you for your input. I think what I feel is sometimes people use such disagreements to create that fitna within the community. Meanwhile, it's just something that is logic. If you have Eid on certain day, you don't impose it on others. But we have another question over here, and I'm sorry, we're just, are we not allowed to question Marjaiyyat? If so, what if we see things happening like what happened with the likes of the son-in-law of Sayyid Khouy and Homs? I stand corrected. I think this is a very pointed question. So I don't know whether we need to go into it or not, but maybe if you might want to address it, perhaps somebody.
As far as the questioning of Marjaiyyat is concerned, Nazir, let us agree on something. It looks good when question and answers holding responsibility is done amongst peers. We don't know the first instance of the logic that was put into place when a certain Marajah or a certain Marajah derived a particular fatwa. I do not know if we, in any way, the way we are at our level, being so busy with the world, and of course, the way you had put it initially with the rapidly changing environment and us trying to earn a living here and there, and then we decide to question Marajah in its general form. It beats the logic. It's like a first-year law student sitting in class and probably questioning a professor with regards to his particular beliefs. Not as part of that lecture, but in actual sense, with a throw of responsibility that no, you are wrong, wherever you are. If that is the basis of the questioning, then I don't think we are in any position to question the Marajah. As far as we are concerned, we need to understand our faith and what is the role that the Marajah plays. And if there is any issue amongst the Marajah, I am sure the Marajah are well versed within themselves to sort it amongst themselves. For us to interfere or for us to question them, I think would be out of our league. In truth, it would be a goat trying to swallow watermelon, for that matter. It's impossible.
Can I add something?
Yes, please.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Actually, when it comes to the Marajah and their wakala and their children, when we accept somebody as our marja, of course there are conditions, and the condition that I have mentioned of the hadith of Imam Hassan al-Askari. If you find these characteristics in a person, then we accept him as a marja. And then later on, for example, his son or his wakala, they do something wrong, so marja is not accountable. So we cannot question Marja. Marja, of course, he knows his responsibility. And this thing only not happening now. Even it has happened in the time of Aimma. In the time of Imam Musa al-Kadhim alayhi salatu salam. Imam Musa al-Kadhim alayhi salam has appointed a person as his wakil, as his representative. And he was, and Imam alayhi salam was in the prison. And he was collecting money. And he gathered a lot of money, and then finally what happened? Imam alayhi salam, he passed away in the prison, and this man did not hand over to the Imam al-Rada alayhi salatu wasalam all that money. And what happened? He started another sect because of the money and all that. So over here, because of that person, we cannot deny the concept of imamah. So the same over here, because of the one person or two or three, we cannot deny the concept of Marjaiyyat. We cannot blame the Marjaiyyat. I
would like to answer or respond to the question of whether we can question Marajah. Question is, there are two ways to question. To question to know, and to question to make trouble, to push my agenda, or to undermine the other person. And I think everybody has the right to question in order to know. But if the intention is otherwise,
Mustafa is very right.
Okay, so basically, I do agree with you when it comes to questioning. Some people question just for the sake of questioning. But the next one, I think, may have something where we can try and figure it out. People believe in different Marajah. We are told to follow the most learned. If we have to use our own mind to follow the most learned, how does it qualify one to follow one and not the other?
Can I come?
Yes, please, Maulana sir.
Okay, about the Marjaiyyat or about Alamiyya, the most learned one. Our Marajah, they have fatwa that if you can recognize or identify who is the alam, who is the most learned one, then you have to go to him. But if alamiya, being the most learned one, is is spread among few maraji. Let's say there are 5 maraji, and you do not know which one is the most learned one, because we people cannot decide. So in this case, our fuqaha, our maraji, they said you can follow any one of them where the marjaiyyah is there, or where the alamiya is there.
Is it true that, for example, if you can't decide which is the most learned, I'll just give an example, just like this. You have Ayatollah Khamenei on one side, you have Ayatollah Sistani on the other side. Yeah. Is it true that if you want to follow one of the Maraja politically and the other of the Maraja socially, you can do that in either way?
Yes, here Marja has, you have to follow the one, one of them. Let's
Only
say
one.
there are 2 Marja. One is Ayatollah Khamenei and another one is Ayatollah Sistani, and you do not know which one is the most learned one, but you know that both of them, they are most learned one if you compare with others. So in this case, you can follow one of them. Okay, so when you start following one of them, and Marja, when he gives fatwa, so there is a term of wujub and there is a term of ihtiyat wajib. When a marja says in a particular issue and he issue a fatwa based on obligatory precaution, so in here, in this case, you are allowed to revert to another marja.
Okay.
Which is a tremendous principle, if you think about it, where a marja and alam at the highest level of knowledge is telling you that I make this an obligatory precaution and not an obligation, because I may still not have fully arrived at the decision, I may still have doubt. This is an admission at the highest level. Therefore, seek, or you may seek from the next one who has high knowledge as well.
Yes.
And then we call our Marajas arrogant.
Zuhair, you wanted to add something?
Sorry, Nazir, there is a concept which is known as tab'id. I don't know if Maulana Sahib will correct me. Tab'id is referred to as something loosely put as partial taqleed, where you can do taqleed of different maraji who are specialists in their fields. But the problem arises here. You have to ascertain that they are indeed specialists in those fields in which you want to do taqleed of those particular marajis. That is the first instance. Secondly, if you are torn between the two, one thing you should understand is that when a maraji passes his fatwa, it is not that he is seated alone somewhere and probably consulting oracles. No, he is actually consulting the specialists within those fields. If it is in the field of economy, if it is in the field of politics, if it is in the field of medicine, if it is in the field of ahkam, he will actually be reverting to some of those specialists who are sitting with him. And they would be the specialists in their fields. And they would, of course, advise and suggest, in turn, with the Maraji trying to make a fatwa on that particular issue. So when a fatwa is passed by any Maraji, there is a lot of work that has been put in. So there is always that concept that actually the Maraji does refer to specialists in those particular fields. Nazir.
Now, when we talk about specialists, what happens, for example, I mean, we all know this, but for the sake of clarity, when a marja passes away, we continue to follow his rules. But then there comes a time whereby there's a new thing that has happened and new rule that has to be taken care of. What does the taqleed, person who's following the taqleed of the previous maraja, in this case, what will he be doing? Does he have to follow anybody of his choosing, or does he have to follow anybody of his choosing? Basically, that's the question.
Again, the same. He has to follow the most learned one in rest of the masail.
Okay, I guess this is a very, very sensitive topic in a sense that we've asked all the questions. The one thing that we seem to be missing in the link is trying to get our youth to understand this concept in its entirety, and we might need another session for this. We only have about 5 minutes left before the end of the program. Is there anything you'd like to add before we close the program for tonight?
Nazir, if you allow me a moment,
Ji.
think in terms of citizenship. Citizenship is a choice. I want to go and live in Canada. I want to take up citizenship there. So I go there and I work extremely hard and wait for my 5 years and I get my citizenship. But that is a choice. But once I've made the choice, I have no further choice in terms of whether I follow the law or not. So once I've decided that I am a Shia Muslim, I need to follow the law. And I have no choice about following the law, and I cannot create the law in my head because I don't have the capacity. So I settle upon a marja. And that is also a choice. And now then to turn around and say, no, to nitpick because I don't like what he's saying, because it does not agree with me, I think is to be dishonest. And
I think that's the, yeah.
Young people are intelligent enough to understand these concepts rationally. We need to understand it ourselves rationally and transfer these concepts to them. It's nothing, it's not rocket science.
But yet, we have many of them still who question the entire episode. But we only hope that programs such as these can guide them.
Well, we have people who want to become Marja themselves. So they undercut and undermine the Marja so that they can wear the cap. But it does not fit, it's too big for them. Or there are those who have a lot of knowledge or a lot of money. And they don't want to tie down to what the Marja says about how to use khums, for example, or zakat funds. They want to use it themselves. And so you have a big group coming up challenging the Marja because it does not agree with me. I'm much more powerful than him. I am the one giving him khums. So why should I not be able to tell him what to do? Or I studied in West and East. I spent 10 years in Hausa and 15 years at Yale or Harvard. So now I know more than the other guy, but nobody's recognizing me. So how do I become the next Marja?
I think what,
Nazir,
yes,
if I can come in, the respected council has raised a very important issue, and I'd like to underscore that with the fact that, sadly enough, and probably the saddest episode amongst us Shia, is that we have tended to dangle khums as our leveraging point. We have done that. We have done that in the past, and we are still doing it. We need to desist. It is very, very important for us to understand the tyranny of numbers in play here. When it comes to the issue of dangling and switching some form of blackmail, when it comes to having certain fatwas being passed or having some influence in the Maraj's office, that is totally being corrupt and dishonest. Okay, that's plain. There is nothing worse than that. No human being can get any lower than that now. That's the first thing. When it comes to the issue of somebody wanting to accept the concept of Marjaiyyat or not, they are free to do so. In fact, if somebody wants to leave the umbrella of Marjaiyyat, congratulations. I would probably give him a garland and ask him to leave. Why? Because either he has become a mujtahid on his own, or probably he has seen the zahur of the imam. Okay. At the end of the day, the system of Marjaiyyat is not perfect. It has got some imperfections, but I would rather sit on my musalla and start praying for the occultation to happen, as far as the occultation to end and the imam to reappear. That is when Marjaiyyat will end. Until then, Marjaiyyat is here to stay. Thanks, Nazir.
No problem. Maulana Sahib, anything you'd like to add before we close up for the evening?
Yes, finally, we can say the Marjaiyyat is something that is from day one, and it is in our nature, and it is in our wisdom and wise. And the way Rasulullah, he used to be marja of his time. As I told you, the marja means someone whom we reward. So Rasulullah, he was the marja in his time, and Ahlul Bayt, they used to be the maraji of their time. And same way, then when it comes to the Nuwab Arba, they were also marja. And according to the hadith of Imam Sadiq and hadith of Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi salam before, Ghaiba, that Imam has mentioned that after Imam al-Mahdi, our ulama, they are going to be marja al-am. So that they go same position and same importance, what the importance of Nabuwa is and what is the importance of Imamah. So Marjaiyyah got the same importance as the importance of Nabuwat and the Imamah. And it is a very, very sensitive thing and very important. And of course, the way Nabuwat got a lot of attack on it, and the way Imamat got a lot of attack on it, and the same way we have a lot of attack on Marjaiyyah. So this thing should be in our mind all the time.
Maulana Sahib, I think when people start understanding that how the marjas have given their life, not only for themselves, but for their communities, for their followers, we'll get a broader sense of knowing their value. Maulana Sahib, thank you so much for this evening. I really appreciate you being here with us. Zuhair, thanks for coming back again. And Murtaza Uncle, your information that you have shared with us, brilliant, and we really appreciate that. And we hope to see you in one of the future episodes down the line, inshallah.
Sure.
So for all those who have tuned in, our next program is in 2 weeks, inshallah, and we look forward to seeing you back then in about 2 weeks' time. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you very much.